comprehending the tremendous advantages will bear its burden without complaint. Now, I took offense to that. I hope you have. I don't believe we're mentally incapable. You know, this sort of goes to, really, some of the top advisors for Harper and for Bush highly adopt, hold, and promote the philosophy of the inherent inequality of humanity. That is their psychological path that they look among us. What that goes on to say is, effectively, we're too stupid to make informed decisions ourselves. No, we're not too stupid. We just trusted our government who has lied, cheated, and suppressed information. Because I guarantee you, once we get the proper information, we as a collective can make an informed decision and we'll make the right decision. So this is just their wishful thinking that we're just mentally incompetent. Granted, there are some who, George Carlin put out that YouTube Google thing where we just don't care. I really don't believe we just don't care. We just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And when we know what to do, maybe then we will say, now we can do something. Okay? And this really brings us now into the latter part here, close it off, is Canadians live in a democratic society. That's what we hear. Is that true? Are we a socialist or fascist? All these other things. What really are we? Okay, so let's look into that a little bit. Really, I think the third thing we have to look at is really, what is democracy? Let's stop and look at that word. Well, technically speaking, a democracy is where the majority rules, where 51% of the people can vote to infringe on the rights and freedoms of 49% of the people, or in other words, mob rule. Okay, you want to live in a democracy? Go ahead. But I guarantee if you wanted anything that the majority didn't want, you ain't getting it. Okay, so perhaps that's why all we ever hear is that we live in a democratic society. But the truth is, we live in more than just a democratic society. We actually live in a free and democratic society. And there's a big difference. The evidence is right before us. Section 1 of the Charter. Okay, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limitations prescribed by laws, demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. Which means, despite the vote of the majority, or the desire of the government, the supremacy of inalienable human rights and fundamental freedoms of the individual cannot be infringed upon and must always be recognized and protected. And that is the difference between a democracy and a free and democratic society. Let the majority sign up for all the benefit programs, but when we understand the type of nation we truly live under, we know at all times we are free to make that decision to sign up or not. Okay? It may be hard sometimes because we've just come out of generations of economic servitude to actually truly accept that we have human rights in the first place and that they truly are supreme. From a hierarchical structure, more supreme than the government itself. And so I put this article in here. It's from the Prime Minister Diefenbaker's. It's addressed to the nation on June 30th, 1960. Because maybe by reading this, it might help you truly believe that you truly have phenomenal human rights. And maybe by motivating that, you'll spend the time to seek out and find out the power you do have. And really, what it is that you need to start standing up and fighting for, recognizing, protecting, demanding. Okay? In the introduction to bring in the Canadian Bill of Rights, he goes, "My fellow Canadians, tomorrow is Dominion Day, the 93rd anniversary of the far-sighted decisions of our forefathers, taking their inspiration from 72nd Psalms to create a dominion from sea to sea. In the spirit of the words, O Canada, it will be my privilege to rise in my place in the House of Commons tomorrow and introduce a Bill of Rights for Canadians. I am sure you will agree with me that the day and the spirit of the day will be highly appropriate for this. As I said in the House of Commons on past occasions, the Canadian Bill of Rights, will be a contract between the individuals of Canada and the government of Canada. It will assert that the right of the individual and the right of the minority to be protected in the exercise of its rights against the majority. It will, above all, assure that each of us will have a legal right to be heard in the courts of this country. It will make Parliament freedom conscious. It will make Parliament realize that rights are to be preserved. It will make Parliament more conscious in passing laws that would have the effect of interfering with freedom. It will act as a landmark by means of which Canadians, through Parliament, will have redeclared those spiritual things which have made Canada great. It would preserve the spiritual wells in legislative form without which freedom cannot survive. It closes off. It goes, it will give Canadians the realization that wherever a Canadian may live, whatever his race, his religion, or his color, the Parliament of Canada will be jealous of his rights and will not infringe upon those rights. Henceforth, Canadians will know that their rights are not to be loosely disregarded, and Parliament will have before it at all times the warning which is emphasized in this Bill of Rights, namely, that fundamental rights and freedoms strictly within the federal jurisdiction shall not be infringed by this or future parliaments. Where do you think you fit in this country? At the bottom as a slave? You know, it's the hierarchy of law, and we need to really grasp that, because until we grasp that, we will not ever seek forward a solution. Here we are, as individuals. Our rights are antecedent to all governments. They did not come from governments. They are a part of us. I know sometimes that may be hard to believe after the generations we lived through. And we, the people, came together and we formed the governments. Okay? They do not have what you have. They never will. The only way they can even get the illusion of having is if we forget who we are. And this then really segues into corporations. Who created corporations? The governments through statutes. You think these corporations that are trying to take over our country have any more power than you have? Absolutely not. They're subject to legislation. As much power as they've been given, which I believe they've been given too much, with a stroke of a pen, with political will, we can bind them back. Okay? We can take over these corporations and put them back in their proper place. Hold these corporations accountable for the inhumanity aspects that they bring into society. There's nothing wrong with a corporation, okay? But you realize these corporations can kill people, and guess what? Nobody goes to jail. What if you killed somebody? We got a balance mechanism in law. How come these guys get away with murder and we have to obey the law? And what's going to happen is the rule of law protects us from these guys who are out there and doing bad things and maybe killing others. That's what the rule of law is. But the second these corporations take over, guess what? The rule of law is still there, but it's so buried, and we all live under corporate policy. How many people here have gone into somebody and the company wanted to do something? You said, well, I don't like that. Well, we can't help it. It's corporate policy. It's policy. It's policy. I hate those words, it's policy, because I know where they come from. They come from a creation of us through a lack of political will. And it's not apathy. It's through generations of frustration on trying to figure out what they've done to us and how do we regain and reclaim our rights back. Once we understand this, these guys have lost all their power. I can't guarantee it. I haven't seen all the agreements, but it's highly likely that most of the agreements that they've signed have some elemental flaw in there. That, here's a big one. Our federal government either has direct jurisdiction or can expand it to the degree that it's for peace, order, and good government. You want to explain to me how a North American Union is an element of good government, peace, order, and good government? It is going to cause more strifes in our country, because now, like some of Bev's information is, what happens when you bring a whole society in who's used to working for 10% of what you're used to working for? Okay, are you not going to get upset? That is not a good government policy. So maybe just through that, a lot of them can be vacated. Okay, we have the 6-month vacation in the NAFTA agreement. So in one essence, it doesn't matter what they do, because if it's not done with the right intent, a lot of them probably can be taken away. But why wait till we go there? Why don't we realize who we are? As Diefenbaker it was his life dream to get the Canadian Bill of Rights in and try to tell us and warn us, because he knew what was coming down the pike. And I believe that's why he pushed. At least we don't have to go back into the unwritten laws of our history. We at least have a piece of paper in 1960 which lays it out crystal clear. Okay? So here's the bottom line. Canada is a great country where the people are free from the first breath they took, where income tax is a choice and is no longer as certain as death. And once the control of the issuance of currency and credit is restored to government and recognized as its most sacred responsibility, we can rebuild Canada into a nation that will shine as a beacon of hope to other nations whose peoples also desire to live in peace and prosperity with respect for human rights and freedoms. We are probably one of the closest countries that has already the structure in place. Okay, U.S. would actually have to create their own central bank. They don't have a Bank of Canada like we do. 6 South American nations, Brazil, Venezuela, Bolivia, and 3 others, have formed the South American Bank. They're taking back control. We're not even first off the starting line. Okay, the rest of the world's waking up. It's time we wake up. We got a great advantage because we got the bank and we own the bank already. We just got to make a few amendments. Okay, so there's the bottom line. But, I know there's always a but, right? Okay, the choice